Well, gentlemen and ladies, we should probably get started. We're thrilled to have Jack Greene talk to us tonight and have some discussion about our stewardship and sustainability. Um, we haven't had everybody introduce herself, but we'd like to continue with that if people are willing. It's our practice in this action team there's my friend Karen and her husband Ben. Hey, how are you? It's our custom to start with a prayer, and if it's okay with everybody, I'd like to offer that. And then we've asked Dave Reiser to introduce our speaker tonight.
Jack and I met in Arizona, 7 years ago. Dave Fallon facilitated that. Um, and thank you for that, Dave. And ever since, we've been buddies in the outdoors. And I was going to show you a sampling of a dozen pictures of Jack in his element, from the Tetons to Cedar Breaks to Red Rocks to many other places. And with my family, with other friends, been a lot of settings, and I think that tells you most of what I like to say about Jack. I hope you all read the bio and what an impact he's had, not just locally in Logan, where he's created a few nature centers in our state. In Minnesota, he's created a couple of nature centers, and then internationally, he's been involved with the environmental science groups and has traveled to a number of countries to teach students, and he's had been a great advocate for students. And some of the most active, engaged students in CCL have been tutored by Jack. I think that's fair to say. And Jack has been behind many of the great things that have happened within CCL and within the state of Utah and the West. And I hope, Jack, you'll give us a flavor of some of that. There's no time to summarize it all. Some of it's in the bio, but he's been a great friend and a great friend of the natural world, and he's passionate. So I'm sure that'll come across well. And anyway, and sorry about your nose, Jack. That's because.
Oh, as long as it's attached, I'm not going to complain.
Yeah, okay.
We have some more that came on. Did we want to do more introductions? I see a couple familiar faces. Dave, Mark, Dave Boland. Hiked with Dave before a couple times.
Hi, Jack.
The other Dave, that is.
Bunch of days.
Yeah.
Now, this is a treat to be able to hear from you, Jack. You're probably the most knowledgeable person that I've ever met going out in the wild, and in terms of just your fund of knowledge and experience with the outdoor and appreciation for it. So I'm really looking forward to hearing.
Thank you.
It's your turn, Jack, and leave some time for questions, because I'm sure we'll have some.
Oh, I'm just going to say something. I have a couple friends here in Cache Valley. Charles already mentioned he is a huge part of CCL here in Cache Valley and has really taken up a lot of the slack that I've given him. Unfortunately, I'm not saying he's happy with that, but I belong to 5 or 6 other boards, so it's spread way too thin. Then Mary Ann Christian, a dear friend from many years, who I met through her children as much as any place. And yeah, she's been a big part of my life for many years now.
See you, Jack. You're awesome.
Anyway. So I really like to go where you want me to go. I mean, I can talk about a lot of different things, but I don't know that you would want to hear. I already told a story about San Francisco Bay and the Golden Gate National Recreation Area there in California. And Texas, all I have to say about my time in Dallas was it happened to be St. Patrick's Day, and they had green beer everywhere I went. There was green beer. And,
yeah, that is a big thing here at that time period. That's for sure.
Yeah. But other than that, unfortunately, I didn't have time to get out and really explore, the landscape and the other culture. I did go to one of the universities, I guess, but that was about it.
Yeah, it's not like Utah or California, unfortunately.
That's good. Diversity is good. So I'm going to start just with allowing you to ask me a question about any part of where I've been, what I've done, and I'm pretty good at making up answers. Ad lib quite well. Anyway.
Jack, I've got a question. I'm one of the things that we're trying to emphasize here in our LDS action team is talking to people about sustainability and climate change and the challenges involved in doing that. And you've got Wild About Utah, a public radio program, and you teach and you educate and all that. And um, if you can share some of your experience about that or the part of it that seems to work to break through those differences and so forth, I'd love to hear anything about that.
Sure. And you probably heard most of this before. I think you're pretty well up on this, but where I always start is first asking whoever that person might be. Of course, that can range, from family to friends to total strangers to some who you know are not any place near where you are with how you see things, what lens you're using to look through, and so on. So I usually start by asking them about themselves, like, where are you from? Where did you go to high school? Because I was a high school teacher for so many years. And then once I find that out, we can start talking about them. I usually start there. And, if it's someone who's probably working somewhere, what is your career, your profession? And then we talk a little bit about that and their family. Okay, I usually, if they're likely to have a family, do you have a family? Do you have children? Yeah, they love to talk about their kids. So right away, we have a bunch of common areas, okay, where it's very easy to enter in a conversation. There's no bristles, there's no pushbacks. There's just, yeah, let's talk about each other here. And then if I happen to have a banner or something that says Citizens Climate Lobby, would you like to know more about uh, where I am here in this booth and what's going on? And I've been in other situations. Well, one several years ago, it was interesting where I was meeting with one of our members of Congress. I won't give you the name because I don't want to embarrass that person. But anyway, I knew where they were and they knew where I was because I write a lot of letters to the editor. So the word gets around. And also they kind of know me in the state legislature, at least those years ago, just because I did some things that raised some hackles and otherwise. But anyway, so when I went into this person's office, and this was a member of our US Congress, and it is a he, I will say that. Anyway, I could see he was ready to be lambasted, because he knew me. I had a reputation. I was in his district, etc. And he thought I was going to unload on him, or we. Okay, I had a couple others with me. And I could see that he did not look happy or receptive. He just kind of sat there with his arms folded, and there was no grin or anything. And I said, "Oh, you know something? I have a son who had you as a teacher in high school many years ago." Okay, so he's giving some of where this person's been, and he really enjoyed you as a teacher. And right away, boy, did he relax, and he lifted his head up, and I could see a smile starting to form. I said, also, I have a mother-in-law who knows you and speaks highly of you. And there it was. That opened the gate. Okay. Then we went on. And then he started telling me the good things he'd done for the climate. He'd met with Obama, and they were at Hill Field Air Force Base. They were looking at some of the installations for solar, et cetera, and energy efficiency, et cetera. So, yeah, so again, it was, I knew enough about that individual. I could right away bring some things up that would brighten the way, so to speak, and open some doors that wouldn't have been there otherwise. Another time I was with an individual, there was a large crowd. It was in a high school, like a large collection. I don't recall exactly what part of the high school, but there were many people there. It was in the theater, actually. And anyway, this person jumped up and he was just railing on what I was about, basically. He didn't attack me personally, but he kind of knew, you know, that this audience was prepped for to hear some things that this person totally disagreed with. And so after he was finished with what he had to say, I jumped up and I said, I really respect you for saying what you just said, because at first you had the courage to do it, and second, I can see you really feel strongly about this. So my hat is off, because a lot of us have these feelings about these strong feelings and want to say something, but we don't have the courage to get up and do that. And right away, I could see that that kind of opened a door. So he was ready to listen to what I had to say. I said, although we're from different places, we have a different past, we're in a different suite of friends and family, whatever. And yeah, so that helped. Talking to family, that's a touchy one, because I really adore my children, and I have a lot of them, by the way. I have 8 kids, which is crazy, because I'm a ZPG advocate all the way, zero population growth, you know how that is. But anyway, and I have several, a couple sons and daughter, and also son-in-law. And again, they see things very differently. They're kind of MAGA a little bit, kind of, you know, in a very different world that I'm in. And I just don't broach the subject with them at all, because I know that right away is going to make some difficult conversation. But I love them too much, and I want to maintain a really good relationship with them. But that's family. So family is especially difficult. And I know they aren't going to change their view from anything I say, but it will, you know, put them on the defensive. I don't want to do that. So I've covered, I guess, several different situations there, Tom. Thanks for the question.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Jack.
I have a question. So,
Yeah.
Jack, how did you become aware? How did you become? What made you what you are now as an environmentalist?
Okay, I'm going to go way back in time to the late 60s, okay, 1960s. And at the time, I was working for industry. I was working for Dow Chemical Company in Midland, Michigan. And I didn't have a clue about environment other than I was a hunter. I was an avid hunter and fisher person. And when I was in high school, we had a habit of, you know, when we were through drinking our beer, we'd throw the bottle up in the air and see if we could blast it out of the air. But anyway, that's where I was, you know, I was nasty. I was a bugger. But anyway, but I loved hunting and fishing, and I loved what I caught and what I shot. You know, I thought, gee, you know, these are wonderful, beautiful things. I'm going to kill them and eat them, you know. Go figure. But then in 1968, there was what was called a Midland Nature Club. They said, well, a nature club, what's that about? You know, they must be hunting and fishing or something. But no, they were just pure about going out and enjoying nature and learning about it, you know, how these natural systems work and whatnot. So I thought, well, I'll investigate, I'll go to a meeting and see. And next thing I knew, I was the editor of their newsletter. And I just got sucked into it. And then they were just starting what was called a Chippewa Nature Center on the Tittabawassee River that ran through this beautiful river that ran through Midland, Michigan. And they were just starting to develop a nature center there. And I'd never heard of a nature center before. So I was introduced just almost overnight. I started seeing nature beyond the end of the sights on my rifle or shotgun, and beyond the end of my fishing line. That wow, there's a lot more to know here, and all these new ways of seeing things and learning about things and so on. That same time, there was an article that came out in the Midland newspaper, whatever, and it was about this nuclear power plant that was proposed to be built on a bay off of Lake Huron. Anyway, so I read the article and thought, well, there's something that isn't quite right here, you know, like what do they do with their waste, their, you know, nuclear waste materials? What is the thermal pollution that goes back into this bay on Lake Huron going to do to that system, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, on and on and on, not to mention, you know, billions of dollars price tag and so on. there must be some better way here. So I attended a meeting, and it was all about how can we oppose this nuclear power plant. And I know today we see nuclear in a little different light because, you know, it doesn't have much in the way of carbon emissions, unless you're talking about digging up uranium and processing it and so on. But anyway, so yeah, so I learned that, oh, there is such a thing as the environment. That word wasn't even around. Conservation was in at that time, but environment was hardly ever heard. Yeah, so that was another lesson, and not only did I learn about it and some of the really serious concerns with this nuclear power plant, but also we took action. Okay, we started meeting with our Congress people and writing letters and et cetera, et cetera. And lo and behold, it took us 4 years, but we actually defeated the building of that power plant. And it was after, I don't know, hundreds of millions of dollars had been invested in some of the infrastructure putting in place because they were so sure that it was going to sail through. But no, we whipped it. Okay. And maybe we shouldn't have now where we are today. But at that time, way back in the late 60s, it was a real issue. And we had a lot of problems that hadn't been really addressed satisfactorily yet. So that set me on that course. And then a few years later, I moved back to Utah because I fell in love with the mountains and the desert and all this landscape that you have to offer here is phenomenal. But anyway, and right away, I was, you know, I should stop going to these meetings, but they had what they called the Ogden Environmental Center, okay? And they had a meeting, and I went to that because, hey, I was hooked by this nuclear power plant thing, see what's going on in Ogden. Anyway, I ended up being president of that organization. So you want to be careful where you step in and what you say yes to. You know, it's usually nobody else is going to take it, so why not? I did, and it was a great experience. But anyway, and that led me into the Ogden Nature Center, which 2 years later, I was invited to a meeting. And since I'd had this Chippewa Nature Center in Midland, I kind of knew, you know, here's some potential. Let's see what that's about. I ended up staying with that for several years and eventually got it up and going. In 1977, we opened the gates on it. And yeah, so that was an interesting day. And yeah, so that's kind of where I come. Thank you, Ian.
That's interesting. Thank you for sharing that, because you came from a background of not caring at all about it to, and it's interesting to see how people go on that journey.
It is. Yeah. Fascinating story.
Jack, what's the function? What do you do at a nature center?
There are, well, two main purposes. One is conservation, preservation. Okay, we pick up in the case of our Ogden Nature Center, we had 136 acres of open space that was targeted to be developed into ball fields, picnic grounds, fairgrounds, etc. And we threw this idea that they never heard of before, like yourself, Tom, that, what is a nature center? So we had a lot of convincing to do, and that's why meetings started in 74, and it was 77 before we opened the gates in the place. We had a lot of hurdles to clear before we got there. But anyway, so one is preservation. Okay, so we kept it as a natural system series. We had riparian areas, we had fields, we had forests, we had all that. So we preserved that. The second and major part of it is education and awareness. Okay, so the public comes in and we offer all kinds of programs, a lot of elementary school, some middle and high school programs, and then for the general public. And we teach them again about what a phenomenon these natural systems are, how they work, the intricacies and nuances of these places, and hoping that the bottom line for them will be, okay, now we know about it, we're going to care about it, we're going to take action to keep it healthy, keep it intact, and so on. So that's kind of our bottom line, along with preserving these open spaces. Whereas the ones in Logan Canyon, those two are on Forest Service land, where they have a special use permit for the areas where they conduct their programs. And of course, they can go out beyond those boundaries into the forest as large. Yeah, you have different configurations for those nature reserves, but they all basically have the same purpose. Education is a huge part of it. So thanks for the question.
Hey, Jack, I have a question, and you know, we talked about a number of things, but I was just thinking, you know, this is a faith-based action team, and I've never asked you this question, but I wanted you to tell us a little bit about your faith, if you have faith, either in a higher power or religion or something like that, and if so, how does that inform your advocacy and also your respect and care for, you know, for the outdoors and the environment?
Another wonderful question. First of all, I've been a member of a bunch of different faiths over the years. I think the first one was the First Baptist Church in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. And the next one was the First Presbyterian Church in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. And after that, I think it was Mormonism. When I came back to Utah, I mentioned 1971, and my first teaching job was in a youth penitentiary where we had a bunch of hardcore youth that once I got to know them, they were like my own kids. They just got caught doing mischief and got incarcerated. But anyway, so I fell in love with a young English teacher who was in that same school. And we get along, and she was staunch. She was a salutatorian for BYU. Very bright, lovely young lady. And she said, well, I can't marry out of the church. I'm sorry. I said, well, you know, I'm not a member of the church, and it's really doubtful that I ever will be because I have some real issues there. The main one I had at the time was they didn't allow blacks to hold a priesthood. That was a big one for me. Plus, I wasn't sure if there was a god or goddess or whatever. So, but she put the pressure on me. Okay. So I really wanted this lady because at the time I had 3 young children as a single parent because my wife back in Michigan, who was originally from Utah, this gets really crazy and convoluted. Anyway, she had passed away, unfortunately, due to a combination of alcohol and barbiturates. It was a horrible loss. But anyway, so I ended up with these 3 young children, 3, 4, and 5 years of age. And I really wanted a mother for them, you know, because I was working full-time teaching, etc. So anyway, so the pressure was on, and I ended up taking the 10 lessons. And as they went along, I finally convinced myself that, hey, you know, even though I have some disagreements, I know they're going to change someday, okay? They can't continue on not allowing blacks into the priesthood, whatever. So I jumped in the pool. I was baptized, came out feeling really good, became a scoutmaster, had a lot of fun with that, Sunday school teacher, on and on and on, doing all the right stuff. Well, goodness sakes. So I don't know if this was a plan of hers, but not too long after I was baptized, we parted ways, and it was her idea. You know, I don't think I'm ready to be the mother of 3 young children. You know, I respected that entirely, you know, but it was a loss. Soon after I ended with another young lady out of the same, yeah, who was the same faith. Okay. And anyway, we ended up getting married, and I was still a member. And so strong member, feeling really good. But the temple marriage kind of undid it, which is crazy. And then temple marriage is sacred, and you know all that goes with that. You would know that, but unfortunately, it didn't work for me. And maybe it was all of a sudden, okay, I've got what I want. I've got a beautiful woman. She's going to be my mother. She's wonderful with young kids. Everything, pressure was no longer there. And by the time I exited the Salt Lake Temple, all of these doubts came flooding back in. It was the craziest thing. And I did not let my new bride know that that was the situation. So I kept on with it, attending church meetings, Sunday school teacher, scoutmaster, etc., thinking, it'll come back, you know, it'll be fine in another, you know, few months, year, whatever. But it never came back. So here I am today as a secular who has a tremendous amount of faith, respect, and love for humanity. Okay. I fall in love with my students, with my friends, of course, with my kids and wife, etc. But yeah, so my saints, if you will, are right here. They surround me. Okay. but I have tremendous respect for all faiths that I'm aware of, as long as they don't come after my head, you know. I mean, some are more aggressive that way than others. But no, I have great respect for my closest friends, two Daves right here, who are strong members of the faith, and I think it's wonderful. There's much good to say about your faith. I'm also, while I'm on that note, I will mention that here in Cache Valley, this started soon after 9/11 in 2001. Some very forward-thinking, wonderful individuals in our valley, one being our former mayor, and a few others, they formed what they called the Cache Community Connections Interfaith Group, okay? That because they were really afraid of what might come of our Islamic people here in the valley. They didn't want to see them, you know, really take a hit because of what happened with 9/11. So they were able to get different faiths together to talk out, okay, we need to treat each other with respect and love, regardless what faith we are. Anyway, I'm on the board of that CCC. They know I'm a secular, okay, but they still let me come in. They know I'm a tree hugger and a CCL member, but they have really helped me with this on our Earth Day events and so on, where they've invited other faiths to participate, and it's been wonderful. So yeah, I have many friends of many different faiths. So thank you. That was a long answer to good grief.
It's a great story. Thank you.
So,
Jack, teaching has been a big part of your life, and you've affected and supported and mentored many students, many of them international students, as well as the high school and college students. I wonder if there's some experiences that stand out to you about experience with those students, successes with the students.
sure.
Thoughts about that?
Well, I already mentioned that I fall in love with my students. It doesn't take too long. All genders, okay. In fact, I was the faculty advisor for the Gay Straight Alliance at Logan High School because they knew that I did not shun anyone because of who they were sexually, their sexual choices, whatever, or their faith or whatever. So kind of they knew that. And so I was the Gay Straight faculty advisor there. But anyway, I don't know. So I always tell my students the first day of class, when I get a bunch of new students in the classroom, I say, the most important thing I'm going to do in this classroom is I'm going to get to know your name and what that name represents. That is who you are. That's the payoff for me. Yeah, sure, I'm going to teach you chemistry or biology or environmental science or whatever. But along the way, I want to get to know you. And we become friends. So you can become friends and still be an effective teacher. And as you mentioned, I've had many students who years later, I see somewhere, whether it's Alaska or Washington, D.C. or whatever, Mr. Greene. It's crazy. But anyway, and I don't know who they are because they've changed quite a bit since I last saw them, but they still know my face because it hasn't changed that much other than a Band-Aid gun. But anyway, and yeah, they've gone to good places. I have a number who are environmental law, which is quite remarkable. I have several others who are working with the State Department and working with countries on sustainability, et cetera, et cetera. So, and some who went into teaching, lo and behold. Yeah, and I just tell them, the reason I do what I do is because I love my students. They inspire me. Okay, my inspiration comes from them, from whoever and wherever they come from. And yeah, it seems to work quite well. And I will say that I have a teacher friend in this group, Marianne Christian, who teaches much the same, and she could say much the same about her teaching experiences over the many years. And she's been elementary, which is a marvel. That's great. But anyway, yeah, so my students inspire me, and in turn, I give them the best I can, you know, which might be it's interesting. My students, whatever the class, whether it's chemistry, physics, biology, whatever, they say, Mr. Greene, tell us a story. So I have a lot of stories that I tell my students. And I found out that they believe what I say, which can be dangerous. They're very gullible. It's hilarious. And I could tell you a lot of student stories that are just really quite hilarious. I mean, what my students have done in class.
And
The
Jack,
one that stands out to me is Piper Christian. And I assume that's Mary Ann's
It is Mary
daughter.
Ann.
Is that right? And
She
could you
raised her
mention that?
hand. Yes, she should.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the resolution 007, that's been one of the great successes of CCL in Utah.
Yes.
yeah, I was pretty excited when and you know, I owe all my kids what happened with them environmentally so much is because of Jack. And I mean, I honor you so much, Jack. That's why I'm here.
Thank
And
you.
I just wanted to hear your whole story. And Piper is continued. She works for O2 Utah. She's working on air quality still. And my son is Logan is working for National Caucus of Environmental Legislators. He's the wildlife and habitat coordinator. And that's, I mean, Jack all the way, you know, constantly encouraging them and the resolution that was passed and that was referred to, Jack, which you probably know, but at the meeting at the city council in Logan, people
Yes.
talk, you know, not passing the second power plant, fossil fuel power plant. A lot of people referred to that, to the resolutions that were made. So just hats off to you so much. And I appreciate what you've done for my kids.
Well, thank you. They're a joy of my life. They're just wonderful individuals, as well as now professionals. Okay. But we're just dear friends, and we do a lot of hiking. In fact, that's where I met Piper, was on a hike. I mean, before I saw her riding up the hill on her mother on a bike, and she was in a little cart behind her bike going up the hill to USU, where Marianne was teaching at Edith Bowen Lab School, USU Elementary School. But anyway, yeah, they're just marvelous. And Catherine as well. And she is a seventh grade English teacher.
Eighth grade English, yeah.
Excuse me, eighth grade. Anyway,
And they're all in Utah working.
yeah, at times she will tap into me and say, okay, I'm going to teach this. Do you have any resources? And of course, I always say,
Oh,
yes,
I didn't know that.
yeah, some good books to read or activities to engage in, whatever.
Nice.
Thank you, Marianne. Really appreciate
You,
it.
Jack.
Yeah, and I could say just a little more about the 007. So this started, well, throughout much of my teaching career, starting with St. Joseph's High School back in 1972, I was at that time kind of a tree-hugging environmentalist. Anyway, so I try to tie that in with all my science courses, and I taught all of them there, and then started a few other ones. But I made sure, and I wanted to get my students beyond the classroom. So we went out in the field a whole lot. We were in a beautiful place right at the mouth of Taylor Canyon in Ogden. But anyway, so every time I was a member of a lot of different environmental organizations, but we got a notice that the Utah prairie dog, this would have been 1974, 75, somewhere in there. Utah prairie dog, the endangered species, was mysteriously removed from the endangered species list. What's going on here? So I said, well, students, here's the situation. You know, do you love the Utah prairie dog? Of course they love it. Everybody loves fuzzy things, warm, fuzzy things. And so why don't we write a letter to our Senator Moss? Okay, at that time, Senator Moss. So that goes way back. But anyway, so they did. They wrote lovely little letters to Senator Moss. And it wasn't over a week, I think, that he responded and he said, well, I don't know why this happened, why it was removed from the endangered species list, but I'm going to check into it. And he did. And then another letter, I don't know, a week later, okay, it was a clerical error, which I doubt that it was really, but a clerical error. And I saw that it was properly restored to the endangered species list. And the students just went, whoa, we saved the Utah prairie dog. They were all over it. It was incredible. And then a few years later, the Kaparowitz Plateau, which is really rich with this anthracitic coal, a lot of deposits in the Grand Staircase, what has become the Grand Staircase, Escalante National Monument. Anyway, there was a lot of push by the billionaires to open that into coal. Okay, but that was right in the heart of this magnificent, wild, almost untouched country, other than by the native people, of course. But anyway, so We wrote letters. We wrote them to Washington, and they went to, I forget the recipient now, the EPA, or it may have been the Department of Energy, one of them. Anyway, students wrote letters. Please don't violate this beautiful, pristine Caparrots Plateau and Grand Staircase Escalante. And anyway, so there were several months that went by, and we, of course, paid attention to where it was in the news and the politics and et cetera, et cetera. But finally, the decision was made, okay, we are not going to develop coal there. And we ended up getting 4 large volumes from either DOD or EPA. And all of their letters were in these volumes, because they had to have the public input on this. They saw all their letters in these big, hefty government documents. Whoa, we saved the Caparrots Plateau. Actually, it was because California, due to some really good energy conservation legislation, no longer, they didn't have the market. Whoever was going to sell the coal didn't have the market, they thought, from California. It was one of the main recipients, had they decided to go. But they cut their energy consumption to the point where they no longer wanted to buy into that coal. That's the main reason it was dropped. But I never told my students that. I said, hey, it was your letters that did that. Another celebration. So yeah, and then on to Mary Ann mentioned 07. And then before that, we had a resolution that my students took before, these were Logan High School students, took before the Logan City Council, Clean Air and Climate Change. And we ended up, it took us a couple of years, because, you know, these things take time, as you all know. And a lot of it is just creating these relationships. This is where CCL is really a standout. I mean, about across the aisle, going in there with respect, listening, okay, before you say too much. Let them do most stuff, all the stuff, all the right stuff. But anyway, so I coached my students on how to approach the Logan City Council members. And anyway, we ended up getting a climate change clean air resolution through the Logan City Council with a unanimous 5 out of 5 vote in favor. Then after that, Piper Christian, Mary Ann's daughter, said, okay, we did that. Now what can we do? So then we went to the state legislature to do the same thing. And right away, we were told by members that had been there for several, decades, whatever, no, don't even go there. It's not going to work. We are a supermajority Republican. We're red. We don't believe in climate change, et cetera, et cetera. Well, it took us again a couple of years, but we ended up getting our 007, that resolution. We have a beautiful picture of it with the students and Governor Herbert signing the resolution. So it was a joint resolution, and both sides ended up passing it. After it took us 2 years again. First year was a failure, and the students were just down. I said, hey, this gives an opportunity to create some relationships with the opposition, and they did during that following year. And again, it's all about respect, relationships, as you all know. Okay, so nothing new there. But that resolution, when it was passed by the state legislature, it made it back to the Capitol Hill News, whatever, and it became a national thing. How did you do that? Well, it was a combination of a lot of luck and some very dedicated and very savvy students. And they were, they were just remarkable. And I have taped a lot of their presentations in committee. And a lot of the members, both sides, ended up saying, I've been in this office for a lot of years, and I've never heard anything as brilliant and as impassioned as your students have given us in this committee today. So those youth, you got to watch out for them. They're dangerous.
All right, Jack, this is Nick Eastman. I live in Cache Valley. And I have no beans about the 007 thing. Could you tell us what it does and what it stands for?
Yes. So again, it's a kind of a clean air climate change thing, kind of modeled after what we got through the Logan City Council. And we had some wonderful support. Ed Red, starting with Ed Red, and then who was a Republican member of Congress for a couple. And I don't, Ed, I heard, was on a mission now for your church. Wonderful individual. But anyway, with him, and then we went on to other members on both sides, both Senate and House. And the main contents is, first, okay, there is such a thing as climate change. Okay, yeah, the climate's always been changing, so big deal, you know. But we, as the human species, have a significant part in that climate change. And that was in that document. They signed it, okay? They approved it. And the third one was, okay, and we can take some actions. We can do this and this and this to cut our emissions, okay? Whether it be transportation, land use planning, how we design our buildings, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, that was all there. We did have to finesse it a little bit. They didn't want climate change as a part of it. They wanted changing climate. That was a big deal. Okay, so again, we went to the opposition and we asked them, you know, how might we change this that you could maybe sign it, you know, let it pass through. And so we listened to them. Again, it's all about listening, respect. Students were very respectful. They thanked everyone. They were, you know, very gracious. Yeah, so 017, it went down. It never got out of committee, but it made it out of rules. And then it was assigned to committee in the House and the Senate, and both of them shut it down, basically wouldn't allow it to be heard. But then we came back a year later after we'd made these relationships with some of the opposition, and along with a lot of press, a lot of letters, lining up businesses, et cetera, who helped us, you know, in the effort. And we got it through, and boy, it flew through in both the House and the Senate. The only ones who didn't vote, there were only a few on the House and the Senate who didn't vote for it. They were Democrats. They said it wasn't strong enough. Well, if it was any stronger, it wouldn't have gotten out of Rules Committee. Okay, so we got a compromise here, folks. At least it starts the discussion, and my students really started the discussion. Okay. They got these hardcore red people to start listening, thinking, okay, if these students are this bright and they're this impassioned, there must be something going on here. So lo and behold, they turned a lot of heads in the right direction. And that, well, back up a little bit. So 10 years prior to when we started working on this, there was a resolution that went through the House and the Senate that was, again, unanimously supported on both sides, that said, no, the science is out on climate change. It isn't worth really paying much attention to. We should not change our policies to address those concerns. So that, you know, upset a lot of folks who saw it differently, including a lot of BYU people, the faculty and administration and so on. But anyway, so that's what kind of got us going in the other direction, that, oh, this resolution is not right. You know, we know it's different now. 10 years later. So anyway, another part of the story there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I just have to say kudos to you. Us in CCL here in Texas are very jealous of what you've got in Utah. We've got our big legislative thing where 100 of us go to Austin coming up in 2 months. And we're just battling for them to not overregulate clean energy sources. So you guys are so much further. You've got your John Curtis and you know, you've got that resolution.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a question for you. When you first began speaking today, you talked about you were opposed to a energy plant back east, and I got the impression it was a nuclear plant.
Yes.
And today I hear people, both environmentalists and non-environmentalists, that are in favor of these small unit nuclear
Modular.
plants.
Yeah.
What do you think of those? Do you think that's a good? I mean, John Curtis, for example, he's in favor of them, but I don't know. So I'm asking you what your opinion is.
Yeah, you know, having spent a good part of my life in opposition to nuclear for the reasons that were mentioned earlier. And some of those issues are still there. If you want to see a great production, it was a PBS special. It was called Four Corners National Sacrifice Area. Peter Coyote narrated it. This was like back in the 80s.
A long time ago.
Spanning, and Utah was a big part of it because Utah is mineral rich, uranium, coal, whatever. And it tells a story from the native perspective, where a lot of these mine tailings ended up, and a lot of the natives worked in these mines and ended up with lung cancer, etc. Tells their story. It tells the water story, the water demands, tells the agriculture. It's really an excellent production. This was like back in 86, 88, but anyway, Four Corners National Sacrifice Area. I'm sorry, I'm going to circle back to your question. Get off on a tangent here. Yeah, nuclear. Okay. So right now I'm torn for a couple of reasons. One is the price tag. Okay. Two is I still haven't, I guess, heard of a satisfactory management for the nuclear waste. Maybe it's out there and I've just missed it. Okay. Not saying that. There's a lot I don't know about where it is right today. But as we all know, it's low carbon. Like I say, most of the emissions come from the mining and the milling and processing and so on. That's where they dip into other carbon emission energy sources. But the burning of it itself, of course, is non. And so on. So, and the water thing, we're in a very, dry part of the country, the world, as you all know. So what is the water? Is there a closed loop on water circulation and so on? And the price tag I already mentioned. And the waste, the tailings, etc. So the other part of this is that right now we have a major development, you all know this, of geothermal here in Utah, where that Charles spoke to, I think, at the meeting that Marianne referred to with our council last week. By the way, and we won that one. Nobody thought we would. Another winner. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Marianne. But anyway, and I wasn't there because I had a tree committee. I'm the tree committee chair here in Smithfield. But yeah, so we want a vote of 4 against the proposal to buy $300 million invested into more natural gas, as I recall. But anyway, which of course, as we know, is about half the emissions as coal, but then you get into methane, whatever. But anyway, so we won that one. But so we've got geothermal. This state, of course, is poised to be a leader in solar and wind. If you go down by Cedar City, where I have 2 sons who live in Cedar City, the wind rarely drops below 10 to 15 miles per hour down there. Great place. And I see now, I thought they were new lakes coming in, but no, they're solar panels, these massive solar developments down there. So I think we just, the tip of the iceberg that we really touched, where we could go with these others that are far less expensive, safer in many ways, and can come online right away instead of, going through all the hurdles that you have to for nuclear and the price tag again. So I'm kind of torn right now. And certainly over the years, it's gotten better, it's gotten safer, it's gotten cleaner and so on, but I can't speak authoritatively on right where it is today, but I still have those things that nag me on it. I don't want it to over compete with these other sources. And energy efficiency, I'll mention that too, is a huge one that we have a long way to go on how we, design everything, our buildings and transportation. Of course, transportation's come a long way, but still has a ways to go.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for that question, Craig. That's a great one. Well, our time is just about up, I think, Dave. And Dave Reiser, that is, he's the one that suckered me into this. But it's been a pleasure. It really has. Seeing some new faces that I haven't connected with at all before. And seeing some dear friends who showed up here for 2 days. Marianne.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Thank you so much, Jack. This has just been great. And I've got about 8 pages of notes, and I think it's been recorded. So we're hoping to rebroadcast this in some form. With everybody's indulgence, I'd like to let you know about a couple of things. On February 19th is our next Zoom meeting, and Jenica Sedgwick, who is the Latter-day Saint Church Sustainability Officer, has got a podcast presentation out there. And we're going to present that at our next Zoom meeting on February 19th and then have a discussion about it. It's fantastic. It's far reaching and talks about her challenges as the church sustainability officer. So put that on your calendar. The second thing is on March 5th, not our sister organization, but the Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship Group that many of us belong to is having a book group discussion. The book is called The Conservative Environmentalist. Our own David Reiser is going to be helping us talk through that. And so we're looking forward to that. And we invite you to go on to Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship website and take a look at that. Those are a lot of fun. And there's people from all over the country. So it's a lot of fun to talk about those books. And that's all I've got. If anybody else has any other announcements, again, we thank you, Jack.
Yes, like I say, it's been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you, Dave, for inviting me.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Thanks so much, Jack.
Jack.